I'm doing very well. Thanks for.
Well, no problem. Definitely a pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have you here, Josh. How was the experience in Mobile, Alabama, for what was a pretty exciting Senior Bowl?
Phil Savage's third year as executive director. With his experience in the NFL, he's really turned it in a hell of a product that really caters toward this experience. A couple of the things he does differently than was done before is, first off, right at the weigh-in, he'll announce the players that were invited and aren't there, and he'll explain, these are the guys that they may have turned it down, but they were cordial, they were quick to respond, and they went about it the right way. And then he'll talk about those with injuries, and then he'll even mention the guys that inevitably there's always 4 or 5 guys each year that don't offer any kind of contact, and he says these are the guys you need to look a little bit more into. So I love that he calls guys out like that. The Monday practices, the first 2 practices, always used to be at the same time at different facilities, and so now the entire NFL gets to see both practices. And of course, the big change for anyone watching the game is you have the 2-minute drill run at the end of every quarter, so that way you get quarterbacks with a chance to operate at 2 minutes, which is obviously valuable too. So those are the changes that Bill Savage has instilled, and it's made a much better product despite this year clearly not having top-level talent compared to some past years.
Yeah, there was some guys missing. The one I thought could have really used a chance in the Senior Bowl was Brett Hundley, because he really wanted to be there, and he really could have used that to really solidify himself as the number 3 quarterback. I think he still will, as some guys didn't impress as much as they will at the quarterback helm, but did you get a chance to talk to Brett, as he seemed pretty disappointed about not being out there?
No, I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I don't know the whole circumstances behind it, but quite frankly, I'm not at all sold on him. Obviously, he's a tremendous athlete. He has the height, weight, speed you look for. He's got a lightning quick release, but then you see his instincts in the pocket. You see his inability to work the progressions, his shoddy accuracy. I'm not at all sold on him as a prospect. To me, he's more athlete than quarterback right now. And really, I don't know that there is one quarterback that really stands out, but I'm not really sold that I would be personally, if I were a general manager, that I would be willing to take gamble on him on day 1 or day 2.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game I think Hundley really needed to be in to prove what he can do, because he was so up and down this year for UCLA. Like, he'd have that amazing game like he did against USC, and then he just fell off the radar again. So, not sure what's happening with Hundley this year. Maybe it was the pressure of going pro and having to look good. I'm not sure. But there were some quarterbacks that impressed. I thought Garrett Grayson from Colorado State was probably the best-looking quarterback out of the whole Senior Bowl. What did you think about that, Josh?
Yeah, well, it was a pretty disappointing week for the quarterbacks, but he was clearly the top guy. Not the biggest of the bunch, but for his weight, I think he weighed in around 215. I think he was 6'0", 2'2". For those not familiar with NFL measurements, that means he's 6'2" and 2/8. But he was filled out properly. He showed he can make all the throws with zip and accuracy. He's still working as far as learning to work through progressions, reading defensive schemes like that. But you see, he clearly has baseline traits, and he's in good shape and a real shot at number 3 or number back off the board. And that's, I think he's going to have. Are you kidding me?
Hello?
I'm sorry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
I'm sorry about that. My phone beeped like I had got hung up on.
No.
So I didn't know if I had a phone problem. But anyway, he has a chance at being that third quarterback off. It was like a third or fourth round pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think, improved his stock in the fact that he proved that he can manage a game and, lead teams down the field to get them points. I mean, as you said, he's not the biggest of the bunch or anything, and nothing will wow you, but when you see how accurate he can be and his ability to lead a team, I think that's what's really impressive. But the most impressive position I felt coming out of this was how some running backs improved their stock in the draft. More so, Amir Abdullah had a fantastic game, led with 73 yards, and had probably one of the more impressive runs of this game. Do you think this will improve Abdullah's stock to maybe a late first, early second round pick?
Actually, I don't think Bill. I think he has a good shot at being around the third round pick, but kind of telling you what you more while I practice. We also saw some of his flaws. Whenever he tend to stop his feet and get not really much of a tackle breaker there, and pass protection, and that's one of the big things that NFL teams are looking. And you look at a guy like David Cobb out of set, both during the game, I that was at this game that really comes out the big winner. Coming in, he was a guy that I would want to wait on and hope that some of the other bigger, flashier names in front of him and just be happy with my every down back round or so. Maybe you can get lucky with that. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore with Cobb. I think you're looking solid player. Cobb, because of his ability to catch the ball and block, as well as run between the tackles, break tackles, and
hello?
Team. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you're just cutting in and out.
Sorry, we're both. Let me see if I can move to a better area. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Cobb end up a late first round pick, early second round pick. Yeah. I really think that highly of him.
I do it too, because he had that one run where he was able to cut on a dime, and it just really blew everyone away. Like, everyone was like, wow, Cobb is out here really showing his worth, because, I mean, Minnesota gets some games on ESPN in some prime time, but I tweeted about his ability to cut on the dime, and, I mean, he's not the fastest of everyone, but just that cut and the ability to break tackles, as you said, I think really improved him, and I tweeted about that, and it felt like the entire state of Minnesota was behind him on that, so I thought he played really well. Who else impressed you at the running back position, Josh?
Well, I'm in the middle of evaluating Artis Payne, so I was very interested to see him, and I thought he had a nice week. I don't think he's a real twitchy guy that's going to be an every down back for you. Necessarily want running between the tackles. He can do a little bit of everything. He can contribute on special teams. He can play on third down. He's going to have to work on his pass pro a little bit, but I really like him as a receiver out of the backfield. He's a pretty instinctive route runner, and he's really good in spin. I think he's be a solid backup at the next level, so I think he really helped his stock. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention David Johnson from Northern Iowa. First thing that popped out at me wasn't necessarily a positive. You could see in individual drills that he was a bit of an upright runner. But then you watch him, and he's got these quick feet. He can really has a decent burst, making one cut, getting downhill. He can run with power. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he was probably the best back there in terms of blocking, which, again, you hear me say that over and over and over again. And to me, if you aren't an elite runner, you have to be able to play. And I think he showed that he's going to have a chance to contribute early for a team.
I felt he had a super impressive run as what was it? Cobb did he scored the first touchdown of the day.
Yeah,
David
that was
a very
probably
nice,
the play of the game. Yeah,
very good, great job to make something out of nothing and make a lot of defenders miss. So I felt he really improved his stock. The other, I guess, halfback, fullback that we should talk about is Tyler Varga from Yale, close to my hometown, so I've seen him play since high school. I mean, he's probably going to get a late-round pick, but the ability to be running back, fullback, and catch out of the backfield, I think that's something teams are going to look at.
Yeah, with him, it started at the weigh-ins because he looked like a bodybuilder. He just absolutely ripped up head to toe. And quite frankly, that's a little scary when you see a back like that because you worry about potential stiffness. And also, he's listed as a fullback coming in. He weighed in at 220, obviously maxed out, so he didn't really have fullback size. But then you see him during the game, I thought, you had to like hit the quick feet he showed. Obviously, he runs with a forward lean, so he can deliver a blow and consistently move piles forward. And as I said, he was quicker than expected. So yeah, I think he had a solid game as well, and I think we're going to be seeing him on Sundays too.
Yeah, I mean, for him, it's an interesting aspect because he's also touted to be drafted in the Canadian draft coming up in a couple months. But I think with his performance here in the Senior Bowl, I think a lot of NFL teams will be liking him. And I mean, to live the dream of being in the NFL over the CFL, well, you're obviously going to choose the NFL. I guess going to receivers, I mean, there was a couple guys that made plays, but the one I was the most disappointed with was Sammy Coates.
Oh, no question. And, you know, there were mixed feelings on him throughout the week of practice. Personally, myself and my crew, we weren't terribly impressed. I didn't really think he showed much of a twitch or much proficiency in terms of running routes. He was inconsistent with the ball in the air. And really, when you have a guy that's not going to consistently create separation on his own, he better win with the ball in the air. And he came in and measured, I want to say off the top of my head, 6'0", so just under 6'2". So he's not as tall as you want for a possession receiver. And he didn't consistently win with the ball in the air, and we certainly saw that during the game. He had a couple of drops. There's one play where he just got bullied into the boundary and left the quarterback no chance to complete to him. Really an up-and-down week for him. But quite frankly, I think this is basically what we saw in film from him. I don't a new revelation or just a down week. I think this is kind of what he is. I really, he's somewhere trying to tout him at points as a potential first-round pick, and I just don't see it with him. I just don't see the consistency. I just don't see the ability to create consistent separation, and I don't see natural hands either. He's more of a mid-round guy.
I do as well, considering the one thing that concerned me is he did have that drop when he was wide open, and he got flagged for offensive pass interference. But
that was such a bad play that he completely misplayed that ball in the air. It was underthrown slightly, which should work completely in his favor, and he goes back through the defender, and he still drops the ball. That was a really frustrating play.
But the other thing was, I mean, he made a fantastic touchdown grab that was called incomplete as his feet were in bounds, but he stated they had him mic'd up that, I forgot it was NFL rules. Well, that can't happen going into the NFL draft. So not a great day for Sammy Coates. But one guy that impressed me on the defensive side of the ball was Quentin Rollins from the University of Miami, Ohio. Just an absolute ball hawk and maybe the best athlete out there.
Yeah, he's certainly in that conversation. Not I think he was in the 5'10" range, but you see his physicality, you see his fluidity, changes directions and flips his hips. He was physical at the point of attack, and he could break and close in front. It was a really solid day for him. He was a guy that I know scouts were buzzing coming in, and I think he delivered.
Who else would you say surprised you and going into this game that you weren't looking forward to seeing, and then they kind of blew you away and look like they've improved their draft stock?
Sure. Well, if we stick at corners, the corner from Miami, Ladarius Gunter, I got a chance to especially focus him on Thursday, and he was all over the place. He's a bigger kid. He's over 6 foot, 200 range. And you saw his explosiveness, his ability to use his size and length to reach around without hitting his man with that trail arm to get penalties. You saw his aggressiveness and his ability to tackle as well. I think you saw that he has potential to be a complete package at that position.
Who would you say was the most disappointing out there? Was it Bryce Petty?
You know what? I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that because I didn't have that high of expectations of him coming in. Maybe La'el Collins. I think, now that being said, I think La'el Collins showed kind of he is, but I was really hoping that he could kind of prove me wrong a little bit. I have a second-round grade on him as a guard, and I think that's kind of what he showed he is. I was hearing all these big things that he's going to just blow your socks off with his athleticism and really dominate guys, so much so that it's just blindingly apparent. Top 15 pick as a left tackle. And while that may still happen, there wasn't any day where any of us thought that he just completely dominated. I was much more impressed with the parts offensive tackle / guard. And his name escapes me. I'm gonna have to look it up. Ali. Oh gosh. I'll look it up. I've pictures in front of me, but this came from Division III Hobart, and it's funny because NFL teams were kind of joking around about how hard it was to get film on him because they don't have the All-22 at that school. They're not used to having studs like him, so it was to really watch film on him in college, and of course it was Division III. But he is Ali Marpet's his name. But he came in and he completely showed that not going to have any kind of problem. Immediately is walking into the weigh-in. You see him in the hall in sweats, a little ticked off. Not that he doesn't want to be there, but he just kind of has that demeanor about him. And then everyone else parades on stage to get their height, weight, and all of a sudden he comes out, and you can just hear the ground underneath him. Boom, boom, boom. He just looks pissed off. He looks like he hates people. See what you want from an offensive lineman. And then he translates it to practice, not only in terms of showing his power and toughness, but he actually had very, very good technique. He's a little bit undersized, certainly for a tackle, but he plays with an excellent base. He consistently gets inside fits with his hands. He could anchor and redirect. He really did everything you could want in terms of an offensive lineman. And you think about the versatility of his ability to kick outside and play a little bit of tackle, probably a more natural fit inside at guard. But that's a kid that really helped himself out. It's hard to give a kid a grade just based on one outing or a week of practice like that. You always want to caution against that. But for those smaller school kids, this is the biggest test for him that worked. I would not at all be surprised to see him sneak in the back day 3 as a third-round guy, because I think he's going to be able to start pretty quickly in the NFL.
Well, that's one of the things you like to see, someone blow someone away and have the potential to just step right into the NFL, because it was kind of hard to find some of those guys. I guess my second to last question for you here is, I mean, it was in Alabama, and Alabama's quarterback Blake Sims. What'd you think of his performance? He got a great ovation coming in. He showed some signs of what he can do well, but also some stuff that he can't do well.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I had finished charting out, I think, 7 or 8 games last week, because I really wanted to get as much on him done as possible coming in, because of the kind of player he was. There's a lot to like with him now. You see he does have the arm strength to make most of the throws at the NFL level. Obviously, he has very good athleticism, but what impresses me with that more so than his ability to scramble and pick up yards is his awareness and kind of natural sense of the play. We saw at one point in the game, I think it was La'el Collins, with his just have a complete miscommunication and a bust in the protection, and so it was a free blindside attack on Sims, and he somehow felt it, spun out of it, got to the boundary, and was able to make something of the play. And he did this repeatedly throughout the game. You saw his ability to step up in the pocket, scramble out, keep his head up and downfield, take off when he needed to. Skills. But then he tends to either overstride or play with too wide a base, which not only is an issue because he's already short enough, and when you're playing with that wide a base, you're lowering your release point even more. But it hurts his ability to get his lower body into his throws. So he's not squared up properly. He's not getting the proper torque or velocity on his balls. Anything that's out to the boundary, they're kind of dying and dipping a little bit, and the accuracy just isn't there. So I think he's far from a finished product, but for me, I love backup quarterbacks that can run, that bring that extra, because when you got to play those guys because your starter's hurt, I think it's a nice bonus to have that kind of skill set that really gives defenses something to prepare for. Plus, he is that preparation guy on the other side of the coin. So if you're going against a quarterback that's a run threat, you can put him on the scout and run that throughout practice, and you can get good positive reps in practice because you do have a guy on the roster that's capable of running and scrambling so well.
Josh, I guess my last question for you, I think the Senior Bowl is a very important thing. I'm happy that it's getting a lot of notice in terms of NFL Network as, I guess, the start of the build-up for their Super Bowl week. What do you think about how well it's being portrayed, because it gives kids a lot of great chances, and what was the overall experience for you this past weekend in Mobile?
Well, I think it's always very positive. To me, for the kids, it's a great it's just another opportunity to compete. And I think that's kind of what Phil Savage is talking about when he goes through the weigh-in and talks about who's not there and why they're not there. Teams love seeing that as much as anything else. And you look into the history of some of the recent teams and who they've taken, especially the two teams that get to coach. You often see a lot of times they end up taking guys higher than you'd expect because they were able to coach them throughout the week and see how they responded to coaching and reacted to criticism or changed and updated their game. I just think it's get too carried away and like Atlanta last year about the film on Rashid Hagholm out of Minnesota, who tended to disappear at times playing in the Big Ten. Took him high in the second round, and he really did not produce at all this year. So there's always cases like that you have to watch out for. But at the same time, you know, that's another piece of the puzzle, and it can be a very valuable piece for teams.
Well, absolutely. Josh, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you, especially to get the first-hand experience of someone who was there from the Senior Bowl. I'd love to get you back on come draft time to talk about, you know, who's going to go where and whatnot. Josh, before you go, just plug where people can find you at.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Josh Likiewitz, and I am with GM Junior Scouting, and do have a new site coming out, so make sure you're paying attention to us. I'm with Russ Landy and his group. That's probably a more familiar name than me, but I think we have some of the most in-depth stuff in the business, and you're also going to be able to see some of our stuff. In particular, our podcasts are always posted on draftbreakdown.com. So keep an eye out for us.
All right, Josh, thanks a lot. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Jason Hagholm Sports Experience. Peace out, everyone.